Thank you, everybody. It's very nice to be here. This is one of my favorite conferences to come to because I get to meet patients and talk to them and interact with you. I'm Amy Lietman, president of NTM Informed Research. Bless you. I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective and background on the organization, and then I'm going to go into a little more information on some of the information we've gathered about the patient perspective over the years, how it's helped shape drug development, and I'm going to give you more information about the things that we do as an organization to help you. And that is if the clicker works. Oh, thank you. Oh, look, and it's sparkling too now. Okay, so there we are. There are my parents. That's who Chuck was referring to, Fern and Philip Lietman. They co-founded the organization. That was be about 21 years now since they started it. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. They started the pamphlet. So the pamphlet's called Inside a Patient's Perspective, and this is how it started. My dad and Fern came out here for her to get treatment, and after one of their visits, they were back home in Miami, and Fern was rather cross about the fact that there wasn't a lot of information available to patients out there. And so on his way out the door, my dad said, here's a pad of paper, here's a pen, write down the questions you would want answered as a patient. And you can find those questions now actually in the table of contents of this pamphlet. What started out originally as something that was photocopied on a Xerox machine is now in print, and it was also translated into 10 other languages. We send out 10,000 or more now copies a year. We give them out for free like Halloween candy. So if you want copies for your friends, your family, your doctor's offices, you contact us, we send them to you. We send them out to doctor's offices. It's a useful tool for them when they diagnose a patient. They can give them that pamphlet. It will give them a lot of the basic information. It will help, I think, calm some of their fears. And it also gets them to us so they can get into support groups. From that, we founded a website. We started a website. The website blew up very quickly. So apparently there was really a big need for this information. And then the support groups had started, and then somebody said, well, we need to fund some research. So my parents said, okay, and they started funding some research, and everything has grown from there. So let's talk a little bit about the patient perspective. I do have some insight on this. I watched a parent go through this for 20 odd years, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of patients. So over the years, we've gathered a lot of this information. So these are a lot of the things that we've heard from you guys that you go through on a regular basis. This information is important. It's important to a lot of people. It's important to your doctors to know what you experience. It's important to regulators like the FDA to know this information, because when they evaluate new drugs and new drug applications for approval, they need to evaluate, okay, look, this is the safety and efficacy of the drug. And then they have to look at, what is this drug doing? How is it helping the patient? And so they want to look at what are the patients experiencing and how does this drug help those patients in those areas? So, that last one, social isolation and stigma, I think a lot of you have probably felt more of that over the last 5 years with the pandemic, with the coughing. Somebody walked in earlier and said, hey, you may want to make some buttons for us to wear that say, I'm not contagious, so that when people hear us coughing, listen, if that is something you guys want, let us know. We can work on that and make that happen. That's fine by us. We're happy to help. That is actually what we're here for. And we love new and interesting ideas. If that is something that patients are going to find helpful, because you are going out in the world and you do need to cough and clear your lungs. And for someone like me, I lived with a parent for so long, I hear somebody coughing, unless I'm on an airplane in an enclosed area where I don't know this person and I'm like, okay, they're coughing, I'll put on a mask just in case. But generally speaking, when I hear somebody coughing, it's kind of like white noise in the background to me. I'm used to hearing it. But for most people, especially after the last 5 years, they get nervous. So if you want that button, please find me afterwards. Let me know if this is something we need to work on. We will. Okay, so let's talk about the diagnosis, because this is something that a lot of you are also, or all of you are familiar with, and you're all familiar with the experience. The experience is different for everybody. It depends on how long you've been sick, what your symptoms are, and who's diagnosing you. How experienced is your doctor, right? But you have a lot of questions. Hopefully we have answers. The Insight pamphlet that I mentioned before is a valuable tool. It answers a lot of those questions. It also helps get you to support groups and your peers are very valuable resources to help answer additional questions. But that am I contagious? That's an important question that a lot of patients have, and their family and friends often have that question too. And it can be very isolating to be sick with this and have people that you care about be afraid of you. So these are important basic questions that need to be answered. And we try to answer all these questions. We try to reassure you, and we try to help get you through the initial part of this and get you as much information as possible so that you can manage this and you can live with it. We want you to live. We don't want you to exist. We want you to live. Let's talk about patient-focused drug development. I did mention the FDA. Patient-focused drug development, or PFDD, is an important initiative that the FDA originally started. They would hold meetings for various disease states, and they decided that NTM was going to be one of the disease states that they held a meeting about. And that was in 2015. And we had very robust patient participation. To this day, the FDA says this was one of their gold standard meetings. So anybody who participated in that, thank you all. You put us on the map with the FDA. They actually love us for that. So there were three things that came out of that meeting in particular. And this sort of came up, and it kind of sounds like a drumbeat now, but fatigue, cough, shortness of breath, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But a lot of people in the room, a lot of the doctors, the regulators, when they heard that day, they were surprised to hear it so often brought up by patients. But now if you go back and look at the transcript of this meeting, which is available online, I've counted the number of times it actually appears in the transcript. Fatigue, I think, actually appears over 100 times in the transcript. It's a big one. Now that we've been through the pandemic and we've learned a lot more about infection, I guess it's not such a huge surprise, or it shouldn't be a huge surprise, but back then I think it was. It was a learning experience. I'm going to take you back a little further and talk about some of the things that have happened, because there's been a huge evolution in this space, and a lot of this has actually occurred in a shorter period, like in the last 10 years. And a lot of it has to do with people like Chuck and his colleagues all over the country who've been working on this. Everybody's been brought to the table, and now there's like a really big consensus working together. So this is a paper that was published by the NTM Research Consortium, which was started by Kevin Winthrop out at Oregon Health and Science University. A lot of you've probably heard of him, great guy. So they got a PCORI funded grant to do a research study. And they gathered a group together, including researchers, physicians, patients, to really uncover what do patients want to know about in research? What are their priorities for research? So this was published in the Annals of the American Thoracic Society, identifying the patient priorities in research. This is especially important because this is something that the FDA wants to know, and not just in our space, in every space now. This is something that the FDA asks about. What is this drug doing, and does it matter to patients? The effect that it's having for the patients, is that something that patients have asked for? Is it what they want? So, this paper identified a number of different priorities, and that has actually helped shape current research that's going on. There's an ongoing pragmatic 2 versus 3 trial looking at, are 2 medications as effective as 3, a home sputum project that we collaborated with the COPD Foundation and National Jewish on to see, how pragmatic, how easy is it for patients to collect their sputum samples at home and then send it off to a reference lab. It turns out, yeah, you guys are experienced in collecting your sputum samples. You know how to get it done. We needed to actually demonstrate that. And so that was done. Testing the efficacy of adjunct therapies. A lot of you use inhaled hypertonic saline. There hasn't been a lot of data behind that. So now there's a study being done on that. Predictors of treatment response. So looking at biomarkers that may predict how patients respond to different treatments, which would be helpful narrowing down, okay, these are the things that we should use for this. And also repurposing existing therapies like clofazimine, which a lot of you have heard of. So now we're going to fast forward, because I've mentioned the FDA, to 2019. The FDA held a meeting about developing new therapies for MAC lung disease. And about 6 weeks before this meeting, somebody said, it'd be great if we could get some patient feedback on, what they're experiencing and, what their symptoms are like and what's bothering them most. And I said, okay, so we'll do a survey. So we put together a survey, 57 question survey, and you guys all turned up again. We got 500 or so responses, and we got some really interesting data out of it that I always show this. And when I always speak at the lecture series for providers too, and I always show them this as well, because I think it's important. So we asked them, what are their top symptoms and what are their most bothersome symptoms? And if you look at what the top symptoms are, this is very consistent, isn't it? And it's very consistent with what we heard in 2015 with that cough, fatigue, and shortness of breath. And this becomes important because they're developing things called patient-reported outcome tools. These PRO tools are used in clinical trials as well to measure how is this drug doing? How is it working on the outcome for the patient? So this feedback is being used to help shape these PRO tools that are going to be used in a clinical setting, in a clinical trial setting. And so all the feedback that you're giving is helping to shape the future of drug development. I also just want to flag at the bottom on the left that anxiety, which is, it's not off the charts, but it's getting close. That's not a surprise. And this is something that, again, I always emphasize to doctors, especially if you're feeling anxiety, that's perfectly understandable. And I always say to doctors, they're not sick because they're depressed. They're depressed because they're sick, or they're anxious because they're sick. We've heard stories of patients who've been misdiagnosed with depression or anxiety. And, I try to emphasize that's not the diagnosis. That's a side effect of the illness and should be addressed equally because it's as important. Addressing that helps you deal with your illness, move forward with your life, live with this disease. So if that is something you're experiencing, I cannot stress enough, please go find the help that you need to manage that, because that is part of well-rounded care. So let's talk about care. What matters to patients? Quality care, effective treatments, sound information, and solid support. And again, these are things that we keep hearing from patients. These are the things that you want. These are the things that you need. So we work very hard to try and provide this for you. We put together this website, this pamphlet. All of the information that we put out gets reviewed by people like Chuck and many others. If you look at our pamphlet, if you open the inside front cover, you'll see the list of people who are reviewing it regularly. If we make any change at all, it goes through medical review. And there is nobody who gets a final say other than those reviewers. I remember once my father, whom I love dearly, and he's very smart, but he wanted to make a change. Chuck said no. And I brought it back to my dad. And he's like, but why not? I said, Chuck said no. And he said, okay, they get the final word. I think that's fair. Okay, I'm going to tell you a true story. It's not based on a true story. It's an actual true story. So my dad recently ran into a friend, and she was there having lunch with her sister, and her sister was describing this lung condition. He said she had, and she was describing medications she was on. He said, oh, you have NTM? She goes, oh no, I don't have NTM, I have MAC. Raise your hand if you're a microbiologist. I think there should only be one hand in the room. That's right. That's right. You have the right not to remain silent. You have the right to ask questions. You have the right to know what species you have, because there are, as Chuck said, 200 species of NTM. We have a lot of people say, oh, I have MAC. And then it turns out when you dig a little deeper, they actually have something like abscesses. They have something else. They don't actually have MAC. And it matters because different species are treated with different drug regimens. So it's really important to know what you have. So we always try to emphasize, and again, I speak to doctors regularly, and I always try to emphasize to them, you are speaking to people who are not necessarily trained clinicians, researchers, microbiologists. Please tell them clearly, tell them plainly, what do they have? What do they need to do? Another example, and we've heard this from you a lot, I get handed this airway clearance device. I don't even know if I'm using it right. Yeah, that's fair. Ask to be referred to a respiratory therapist. It's your airway clearance device. And we've always held the position that airway clearance is as important as the medications you take. It is a very important part of your care regimen. You should know how to use these devices properly. And in fact, when I spoke to doctors a couple of days ago, I had a picture of a bronchoscope up on the screen. I said, how many of you knew how to use this on the first day of medical school? And not one hand went up. I said, that's right. You had to be taught. So when you prescribe airway clearance for your patients, please make sure they are taught how to use it so they can get the maximum benefit from their airway clearance. If you're not sure about something, ask the questions. They should be willing to answer. They should be happy to answer. You have to be a part of your active care, and that's part of it. How you can help your patients. This is what I tell doctors every time. This is how you help your patients. This is the proper care and feeding. And in case, I mean literal feeding. You need good nutritional support, right? This is the proper care and feeding of your patients. And this is what I tell them. And then I say, contact us, online support groups, support groups, information on clinical trials. Sometimes if you're having a problem, if you're upset about something, you can call our office. We're happy to talk to you. We're happy to help you find solutions. This is part of what we do. We have a very dedicated staff and we love talking to patients. So please don't ever be afraid to reach out to us. But look at all the stuff that you need here. And I want to point out something else, proper rest. And I'm going to call out John Torrance in the back again, because this is a great conversation. The first time he came to see me speak, I talked about getting rest and managing your fatigue and taking a nap if you need it. And he said to me afterwards, he said, thank you for saying that. Nobody ever said to me before, it's okay to take a nap. I take naps sometimes. Like when I'm sick, I take naps. You should take a nap if you need to take a nap. Manage your fatigue. It's incredibly important for you to do that. Manage expectations, what to expect when you're expecting side effects. Okay, this is really important. So we have an online forum, which I will discuss shortly, but I did a deep dive into there recently because I was thinking about inhaled medications. I remember when Fern was doing inhaled medications, she was hoarse a lot of the time, her voice was hoarse. And I thought, what are patients experiencing with this? And what are they doing about it? And it turns out in our forum, which is a fun place to be, it's really happening. You guys should join if you haven't. This is what they're experiencing, the hoarseness, the coughing, the GI side effects. And they talk a lot about what they're doing to help mitigate it. So this is another way that peer support can help you. People are trying different things and learning ways to help themselves, and they share that information. So this is why peer support is so, so important. Resources for patients. I mentioned our website, ntminfo.org. It is the hub for all things NTM. We want you to spread the word and not germs. Bronchiectasisinfo.org, our sister site about bronchiectasis, has information on bronchiectasis, which, I think most people in this room are already extremely well-versed in this. If you're not, that's why you're here today, to get well-versed in it, and that's what you should be doing. But there's good information out there, and again, medical review is important, and that's why we do it. I mentioned our support groups. Most of them meet online, so you don't have to worry about sitting in a room with people, and they're easy to reach out to, but we have 37 support groups in the United States and 5 ex-US groups. So we have 42 groups, and we're forming new groups all the time. And if you want a group that's specific to your area and we don't have it, we will help you start that group. We have a very robust program in place. All the meetings are staffed by an NTM staff member. We usually help run the technical side, the Zoom part, so that group leaders can focus on running their group meeting and talking to patients. But we have a support group liaison who helps the group leaders get going. We have a training and support program to help group leaders understand you do not need to be an expert in NTM to lead a group. You need to be compassionate and caring. And you need to want it. And it's not a huge commitment of time, but it's something you need to want to do, and you can do it. But everybody thinks they have to be an expert in this disease to do a support group. You don't. If you're a patient, you're pretty much already an expert. You're living with it. This is our global forum. I mentioned this. This is NTM-BE Connect. We launched this 4 years ago, and you guys really responded well to it. We deliberately chose a very easy to use platform. It's very user-friendly. It has its own community manager. You can see the number of discussions. There's a lot of discussions taking place. That's in 4 years. We have over 12,000 discussions taking place, 3,500 members. There's a library of documents. We don't have providers in there. It's a safe space for patients. There is one exception. There is only one exception, and that is Joe Falkenham, the waterborne pathogens expert. He was one of our beta testers when we were developing it, and he just kind of stayed in there. And then one day he answered a question about water, and everybody's like, Joe's here. And so they started asking questions, and he really enjoys that. He learns a lot from patients, so he likes being in there. But other than that, we do not allow industry in there. We do not allow researchers in there. We do not allow clinicians in there. That is a safe space for patients. That's your place. I'll take questions after. This is our YouTube channel. We have like over 120 videos now. We record our webinars. We've recorded past conferences. They're all archived there. We have series on emotional well-being and nutrition, and you'll be hearing from those speakers later. But those are two very important parts of taking care of yourself. If there are topics you want to learn about and we don't have a webinar on it, let us know. We will plan one for you. But we have a great series of webinars, and so you can catch up on information at your leisure whenever you want, just by watching YouTube. I mentioned the Insight pamphlet, which we do give out like Halloween candy, but you don't have to wait till Halloween to get it. You can call us, you can email us, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you to the page to get them. You can ask for as many copies as you need and we will give them to you. I wanted to mention also, John from the COPD Foundation mentioned 360 Social, and that is another online support forum that you can join. We helped develop it with them. There is also the Bronch and NTM Research Registry, which NTM Info at one point helped pay for the development of the NTM piece so that we could gather that. The purpose of that registry is to collect data and help accelerate clinical trials. These are great tools. We've been very fortunate to partner with the COPD Foundation on a number of projects throughout the years. They're wonderful collaborative partners. And us working together has really helped move things forward and it helps support you. So we're really delighted to continue working with them, and we're looking forward to the launch of the Care Center Network as well. Couple last things I wanted to mention. We are having a hybrid in-person and virtual conference, May 16th and 17th in San Diego. You can find the information online and you can sign up for it, and we hope you'll join us. There's some great speakers lined up and it's going to be a lot of fun. July 1st is World Bronchiectasis Day, and August 4th is World NTM Awareness Day. There's going to be a couple of great webinars for World Bronchiectasis Awareness during the month of July. And in the month of August, we're going to have 4 webinars, including one by Chuck Daly for World Bronchiectasis, for World NTM Awareness. So we hope you'll join us for those. And we will be sending out more information as we get closer to those dates. You can get in touch with us here. You can follow us on social media. As I said, you can call us. If you leave us a voicemail, our voicemails get transcribed and emailed to us, so you can always reach us. You can also email us through that general mailbox. That gets to us as well. And last and not least, but not least, I wanted to introduce you to the team because these are the people you'll be interacting with in addition to me. We have Helga Rosado, who's our operations director. Trisha Kemp, our community engagement director. So when you're dealing with support groups or the online community, you'll be dealing with Trish a lot. Vanessa Hevia, who's the office administrator, and she tells me where I need to go and what I need to do. And Laura Layton, who's our community manager. So when you join NTM Connect, if you have any technical issues, if you're not sure how to do something, Laura is the one who can help you. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I know there was a question right back there. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the library for the Global Forum.
Okay, so the library, there'll be a link for library.
Yeah, so in the Global Forum, if you're in the Global Forum, you click on the library link and you'll see all the documents that are in there that you can access. Joe Falkenham has put his papers that are published in there. There are some patient notes that have been developed and then vetted by professionals and have been uploaded there. There are some, meeting notes that have been uploaded there by some of the support group leaders who send out their meeting notes to some of the support groups. There are a lot of great resources in there. So that's a great place to go. I'm around for the rest of the day. If you have any questions, please feel free to come and find me. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.